There are very few places, if any, that can match the beauty and wonder of Europe. From the Mediterranean coastline to the scenery of the Alps, Europe remains unmatched to the rest of the world. This video is a long one, so I've made timestamps of all the places in the description below so you can jump around to your favorite destinations. Let's start this video off at France's Mont Saint-Michel. I have to say this is easily one of my favorite places I've visited in Europe. It's truly magical. Now to get there, it's a 4-hour drive from Paris. Now you can't drive directly to the tidal island. Instead, you can park in the parking lots outside and either take a shuttle or walk about 4 kilometers. Now I definitely recommend walking if you can. As you approach the island, it's quite the experience. It just made me think of how the people must have felt throughout the ages as they came here. It's just truly something out of a fantasy film. Now when you reach the island and walk through the gates, you feel like you're walking into a Harry Potter movie. It was as if I was walking down Diagon Alley. Now around sunset, the tide started to come in. I was amazed by how fast the water levels were rising. I understand now why it was so dangerous for the medieval pilgrims to walk to the island. Now on our way back, we met up with some sheep in the fields. Definitely was the perfect way to end our time at Mont Saint-Michel. While we're still in northern France, we're going to visit Etretat. Located about 3 hours drive from Paris, Etretat is a charming seaside town. The main reason I wanted to come here was to witness the impressive sea cliffs. When we reached Etretat, we walked through the beautiful coastal town and arrived at the beach. It had this nice pebblestone sand and you could get a view of the cliffs. They were freaking huge, a lot bigger than I expected. Now after we decided to walk on top of the cliffs, we strolled along the beautiful boardwalk and made it to the top. My favorite features of the cliffs are the sea arches. There are 3 of them, and I also like the pointed sea stack called l'Aiguille. If you can, I recommend staying until sunset. The sun will hit the cliffs perfectly, lighting them up with an orange glow. Afterwards, we're going to visit the island of Corsica. Located right above the island of Sardinia, Corsica is this massive island full of so many diverse landscapes. It's home to jagged mountains and some of France's best coastline. Now one of my favorite spots on the island is Bonifacio. It's this medieval town built upon these limestone cliffs. It's nicknamed the Mediterranean Sentinel. Now it's located right in the most southern point of the island. Nearby there are some more incredible white cliffs with crystal clear waters. After Corsica, we're going to visit the nearby island of Sardinia. Now with some of Europe's best coastline, pristine beaches, and the clearest water you've ever seen, Sardinia is the place to be. The main reason I wanted to go to Sardinia was to visit Cala Golorizze. I think it's easily one of the most beautiful beaches in all of Italy. It has these massive pointy rock formations coupled with green cliffs and Gatorade blue water. We anchored and immediately went for a swim. The visibility was absolutely incredible. It's some of the best I've ever swam in. Another reason I wanted to go to Cala Golorizze is because there's a sea arch where you can cliff jump. I sent a few jumps off and it was just so much fun. There's no better feeling than sending a gainer into the ocean. There's just so much to do and see in Sardinia. I hope you can all visit one day. Now after Sardinia, let's head over to the Amalfi Coast. I have to say this is one of the most beautiful places, not just in Italy, but all of Europe. It's just hard to believe this place exists. Now, one of the most well-known towns on the Amalfi Coast is Positano. When you see this place in real life, you won't believe it. It's hard to beat the backdrop of the mountains filled with colorful villas against the Mediterranean Sea filled with boats and yachts. One of my personal favorite places on the Amalfi Coast is Fiordo di Furore. This is easily one of the most scenic beaches I've ever been to. It's located in this little fjord complemented with an incredible arch bridge. It's a paradise for cliff jumping. There's so many places you can jump from. Now just off the Amalfi Coast, there's an incredible island called Capri. I think it's easily one of the most beautiful islands in the world. It's a classic Mediterranean island surrounded by crystal clear water and sheer cliffs. If you do go to Capri, I definitely recommend renting a boat. That'll be the best way you can see the island and find its hidden grottos and jaw-dropping coastline. One of my favorite features of Capri is the Faraglioni. There are these incredible sea stacks that jut right out of the sea. And I just had such a good time jumping off the boat there and marveling at the Faraglioni. Afterwards, we're going to head over to northern Italy to visit Varenna. Located on Lake Como, this is one of the most idyllic places I've ever been to. Varenna was found all the way back in the 8th century by local fishermen. I stayed several nights here and it was such an enjoyable and relaxing time. I love walking around the village through all its cobblestone alleyways. There's a great plaza and an impressive church. Now, one of my favorite places I went to in Varena was its northern shore. There's restaurants and a little stone beach where you can watch the small waves roll in. I think one of my favorite things I did was just enjoying the sunset on the docks there. I mean, this place is truly incredible. After, we're going to visit one of my favorite towns in Switzerland, Zermatt. It's a charming village shadowed over by the daunting Matterhorn mountain, and there's just something magical about this place. Now, the city is full of shops and restaurants, including my favorite, McDonald's. Now, one thing you gotta do while you're there is take the Gonagrat Railway. It starts in Zermatt and takes you up to 3,100 meters to enjoy some of the best views of the Matterhorn. We got up super early to take the first train and climbed up the mountain. I was just baffled by the views. Now, we got off at the Rotenboden station, and I was just so freaking excited. I've been wanting to come here for years, and it lived up to the hype. There are 2 lakes that offer some of the best views of the Matterhorn, and if the conditions are just right, you can see a perfect reflection of the world famous peak. Not only is the views magical, but there are some of the cutest sheep I've ever seen. They have the curliest hair and twisted horns and look like an animal you would find in a fantasy novel. Afterwards, we're going to head over to some warm weather in Portugal to visit one of my favorite beaches, Praia do Ursa. Located on Sintra's coast, about 50 minutes from Lisbon, this is probably my favorite beach in all of Portugal. Now, one reason I like it so much is for its rock formations. There's several of them and they look like wizard hats. Now, to get to the beach, it's a decent hike. It only took us like 20 or 30 minutes to get down. It is just a little steep descent, but it's nothing you can't handle. Now, when you reach the beach, I was just amazed by the rock formations. They're just huge and really fun to walk around. The water was a little bit chilly, but would be so nice on a hot day. Now, if you can, it's an amazing place to go for sunset. The beach lights up with an orange glow and it's just hard to beat. Afterwards, we're going to head over to the nearby Pena Palace. It's this stunning, colorful castle that sits on top of the Sintra Mountains. The palace was completed in 1854, and today it stands as one of the 7 wonders of Portugal. When we reached the palace, I was just amazed by the architecture and the colors. It was so vibrant, and I loved the contrast between the red and yellow structures. Now, right next to the palace is the Castle of the Moors. It was built all the way back in the 8th and 9th centuries. I actually like this place a lot better than the Pena Palace. There was way less people, and there was just like so much history. One of my favorite things that you could do is you can walk around the perimeter of the fortress and get a little taste of what it must have felt like to live in Portugal during medieval times. After, we're going to venture to the Atlantic Ocean to visit the enchanting island of Madeira. I recently returned from exploring this island and just was a phenomenal time. One of my favorite beaches on Madeira is Ponta do Sol. It's this beautiful town that reminded me of Italy's Amalfi Coast. The beach there wasn't sandy, instead it had smooth rocks, and the swimming was spectacular in the crystal clear waters. The main reason I wanted to go here was to do some cliff jumping. On the east side, there's this pier area with this super cool arch bridge, and then there's some little cliffs to jump off. I sent a few jumps and it was just freaking fun. The water felt so nice and was such an enjoyable spot. After, we relaxed on the beach and did some more swimming and just enjoyed the sunset. After, we're going to visit my favorite place on Madeira, Pico do Arriero. Now, I love this spot so much I came up 4 times. Now, it's located about a 40-minute drive from Funchal. Pico do Arriero is the 3rd highest point on the island with an elevation of 1,818 meters. Now, since it's so high up, you'll often be in or above the clouds, which creates the most epic landscape. Now, to reach Pico do Arriero, you don't need a hike. You can drive a car to the top, and from there you can go explore the mountains. I was surprised how well maintained the trail was. It's a stone path with guard wires for a majority of the way. I mean, just so nice. If you hike for about 15 minutes, you'll reach the first lookout point called the Miraduro do Ninho da Manta. Now, the views there are just absolutely incredible. It has a phenomenal vantage point. We went up here for sunrise and sunset, and both were amazing. But I'd say sunset was my favorite because there was like hardly anyone up there and basically had the whole place to ourselves. I mean, it just felt like a dream up there with the clouds and the setting sun. While we're still in the Atlantic, we're going to visit Portugal's archipelago of the Azores. Now, the Azores are a group of 9 islands like none other. They remind me of a hybrid of New Zealand and Hawaii with rolling pastures and green scenery. I mean, it's basically the Garden of Eden in real life. The largest island on the Azores is São Miguel. One of the most stunning places on the island is Lagoa das Sete Cidades. It's a twin lake situated in the crater of a volcano. One lake is green while the other is blue. The nearby Santiago Lake is also a really unique place. Now, another one of my favorite islands on the Azores is Pico. It's home to the highest point in all of Portugal, called Mount Pico. It's a stratovolcano that reaches 2,351 meters high and it last erupted in 1720. I just can't believe how huge it is. I mean, it's just hard to beat the scenery of this volcanic archipelago. After, we're going to head over to Spain to visit possibly my favorite island in the world, Mallorca. When you think of a Mediterranean paradise, this is it. Mallorca is home to crystal clear water, windy roads, and some of the world's best cliff jumping spots. When I started solo traveling, this is one of the first places I went, so will forever have a special place in my heart. One of my favorite places in Mallorca is Cala Farquez. You're just going to be blown away by the beauty of this place. It literally has everything from sandy beaches to prime cliff jumping spots. When I was there, I did one of my biggest cliff jumps ever and jumped off a massive 60-foot arch. It was terrifying, but it's became one of my all-time favorite travel memories. Another cool thing I did is me and my brother found this underwater cave and we swam through it. I just couldn't believe how clear the water was. On the other side of Mallorca, you can visit the famous road to Sa Calobra. If you love driving, you'll definitely enjoy this place. It's full of hairpin turns and loops that wind down the mountain. Now you can take the road to the bottom and you'll visit this place called Torrent de Paris. It's this awesome beach between these two cliffs. I mean, it's hard to match the vibes of Mallorca. I couldn't recommend this island enough. After, we're going to head over to Greece to visit the iconic island of Santorini. This may be Greece's most popular destination. I went here a few summers ago and it lived up to its hype. One of the most famous places on Santorini is Aia. When you think of Greece, this is it. White houses, blue roofs, and an insane backdrop. I went there early in the morning and had the most incredible sunrise ever. Another town on Santorini is Thera. It's this little town that's built on the rim of a volcano. A really cool beach on the island is Red Beach. It's famous for its maroon colored sand and red cliffs that make you feel like you're on Mars. After, we're going to head up to Ireland to visit the dramatic Skellig Islands. Located off the coast of southern Ireland, the Skelligs are a set of two islands that are easily one of the most epic locations. The only way to reach the islands is by boat. We left from the town of Portmagee and it took us about an hour to reach the Great Skellig. We got off the boat and I was just so freaking stoked. We just started walking up the island's path until we reached the stairs that lead up to the top to the monasteries. Now, the history of the island is just absolutely fascinating. The monastic settlement dates back to the 6th century, where the monks of St. Fionnan lived simple lives on this isolated island. They built these beehive huts completely out of stone. They were precisely designed to make sure no water could get into them. Now, it's believed there were about 12 monks that lived here at a time. In the 13th century, the monks left the island for mainland Ireland, and since then, Skellig has become a place for pilgrimage. All in all, the Skellig Islands were one of the coolest places I've ever been, and I couldn't recommend them enough. Afterwards, we're going to visit the most famous place in all Ireland, the Cliffs of Moher. Now located on Ireland's west coast, about a 3-hour drive from Dublin, the cliffs stretch over 14 kilometers, with the highest reaching 214 meters above the sea. When we reached them, I was just amazed by the size of the cliffs. I mean, they were way bigger than I imagined, and they just drop off straight into the ocean. If you want to walk to the end of the cliffs, you can make the trek to Hag's Head. If you can, I definitely recommend waiting for sunset as the light hits the cliffs, giving it a strikingly orange glow. I mean, it's easy to see why it's one of the most popular places in all Ireland. After, we're going to head up to Norway to visit Geiranger. Now located about a 6-hour drive from Oslo, Geiranger is one of Norway's most popular destinations. Now the main reason I wanted to go to Geiranger was to visit Skagafla. It's this historic farm built on a cliff 270 meters above the fjord. Now you can only access the hike by taking a ferry over. It cost about $50 per person and the ride had some amazing views. Now when we got off the boat, the hike was no joke. It just goes straight up the mountain where you get some amazing views on your way up. When you reach the farm, you'll feel like you're in a fairy tale. The cabins are covered in moss-covered roofs and the views you get up there are just astounding. I'm just jealous of whoever owns those cabins. Farmers used to live here all the way back in the Middle Ages, and it was inhabited until the early 1900s. Today, it's easily one of Norway's most beautiful hikes and one of my favorite places I visited during my time in Norway. Now after, we're going to visit one of my favorite lakes in Norway, Luvatnet. Located about a 2-hour drive from Geiranger, Luvatnet is this glacier lake with turquoise colored water coupled with an incredible backdrop of the mountains. Now when we were there, we drove to the other side of the lake to this place called Ludalen. Now there was this insane waterfall called Ramnefjellfossen that was easily one of my favorites that I saw in my time in Norway. The only regret I have when I visit Luvatnet is not going for a swim or at least taking a boat out. So if you go, don't make my mistake and enjoy the wonders of this incredible lake. Now afterwards, we're going to visit Romsdalen. Now when I got to Norway this summer, this was the first place I went. It's about a 5-hour drive to get there from Oslo, and it's this phenomenal valley surrounded by some of Europe's highest cliffs. Now one reason I wanted to come here was to witness Trollveggen. It is the tallest vertical rock face in all of Europe with a height of 1,700 meters. Now one of the best places to view Trollveggen is from Litlefella or Little Mountain. Now to get there, you take a toll road that costs about $10, and it's a fairly easy hike that takes about 20 minutes. Now when you're up top, you'll be facing the daunting Trollveggen mountain across the valley. When I was there, it was pretty cloudy, but I still got a good look at it. You also get great views of the winding river and valley below. I mean, this place is just freaking amazing. Overall, one of my favorite places I visited in Norway. While we're still in the Nordics, we're going to head across the Atlantic to visit Greenland. Although it's located in the North American continent, Greenland is politically and culturally associated with Europe as it's part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Now Greenland is just absolutely huge. It's the biggest island in the world, but due to its harsh living conditions, only 56,000 people live there, making it the least densely populated place on the planet. Now the capital city is Nuuk, and about a third of all the people in Greenland live there. Another interesting place is Ittoqqortoormiit. It's this little commune located on Greenland's northeast coast and is considered to be one of the most remote settlements on Earth. I just think Greenland has some of the most untamed and wild places. There's just endless fjords and wonders to explore. Such a fascinating place. Afterwards, we're going to head over to Czechia to visit Prague. Now, when it comes to European cities, it's hard to beat the charm and beauty of Prague. Now, located right in the middle of the Czech Republic, Prague is known as the political, cultural, and economic center of Central Europe. The city was founded around the 9th century and flourished during the Renaissance and Baroque eras. Now, Prague was the capital of the Kingdom of Bohemia and was the main residence of many Roman emperors such as Charles IV. Now, one of my favorite attractions in the city is the Charles Bridge. Its construction began in 1357 and it wasn't finished until the beginning of the 15th century. The bridge is decorated with an alley of 30 statues. It's so scenic and such a great feature. Now, the Old Town Square is also a great place to explore. I mean, Prague just has such a historic vibe, and I hope you all can visit. Now, afterwards, we're going to visit the fairy tale town of Český Krumlov. Now, located about a 2-hour drive from Prague, Český Krumlov is a medieval fantasy. As I was doing research, I was just blown away by the beauty of this place. It looks like something straight out of a fairy tale. The town arose around the year 1240 when the Český Krumlov castle was built and a settlement emerged beneath it. Český Krumlov thankfully escaped the bombings of World War II, which is the main reason the city is so well preserved. Today it stands as one of Czech Republic's most beautiful towns. One of the main attractions of the town is the castle. It's the second most visited in the country. It's surrounded by a moat that's not filled with water but bears instead. That's pretty crazy. You can also visit the castle tower to get an incredible view of the town. I mean, it's just such a magical place and I can't believe it exists. After, we're going to head over to Germany to visit the city of Dresden. Now, located in eastern Germany near the Czech Republic border, Dresden is an incredibly beautiful city built upon the Elbe River. It's famous for its Baroque and Rococo architecture. Now, leading up to the 20th century, Dresden was just a remarkably beautiful place, but tragically, during World War II, the city was almost completely destroyed by air raids. I mean, the whole city was just turned into rubble. Now, the restoration of the city took decades to complete. Now, today, Dresden is one of Germany's most visited cities and has been nicknamed the Florence of the Elbe. Afterwards, we're going to visit Heidelberg. Now, located about an hour's drive from Frankfurt, Heidelberg is a historic city situated on the Neckar River. Heidelberg is probably best known for its university that was founded over 600 years ago, making it Germany's oldest university. I mean, it would be so cool to study there. Now, what I love about the city is its bridges that cross the Neckar River. I mean, Germany knows how to design a beautiful city. Now while we're still in southwestern Germany, we're going to visit the Black Forest. Now located right on the border of France, the region is famous for its dense forest, picturesque villages, and is often associated with the Brothers Grimm's fairy tales. Now one of the most prominent cities in the Black Forest is Freiburg. It's a vibrant university town with some incredible architecture. Another nearby fairy tale location is the Hohenzollern Castle. Now I have to say this is one of the most impressive castles in all of Germany. It sits perfectly on Mount Hohenzollern and can be seen from miles away. Hohenzollern is the last of 3 castles that was built upon this hill. It was completed in 1867 as a memorial to the Prussian royal family. Today it's one of Germany's most visited castles, and I understand why. Afterwards we're going to visit Germany's highest peak, the Zugspitze. Now with a height of 2,962 meters, easily one of the most impressive mountains in all of Germany, Zugspitze is located south of Garmisch-Partenkirchen, and the easiest way to reach the top of the mountain is by a cable car. It costs around 60 euros, and it's one of the biggest gondolas I've ever been in. It holds several world records, including the longest free span in a cable car, with a distance of more than 3,000 meters. Honestly, an engineering phenomenon. And once you reach the top, you can explore the mountain station. I mean, it really blew me away up there. It totally reminded me of an evil villain's lair. One thing that I thought was interesting is you can walk through this tunnel and it'll take you to the Austrian side of Zugspitze. Now from the platform on the German side, you can see the summit cross. Me and my brother decided we wanted to climb to the top. The snow made it a little sketchy, but we held on tight to the iron wire and climbed a ladder and made it to the cross. I mean, the views were unreal up there. I mean, if you go in the summertime, I'm sure it's not as sketchy to summit this. Now after Zugspitze, you can take the cable car down to visit the Lake Eibsee. Now it's known as the Maldives of the Alps with its clear water and tree-dotted islands. I mean, the color of the water there is astounding. Now if you have time, I definitely recommend walking along the lake. It's full of beautiful groves of trees and a perfect place to relax on the shoreline and enjoy some Bavarian nature. While we're still in the Bavarian Alps, we're going to head over to the Eagle's Nest. Now I'm really fascinated with World War II history, and I had to see this place for myself. Now the Eagle's Nest was built in 1939. Now to get to the Eagle's Nest, you can take a bus up. When you get to the top, you'll walk through a deep tunnel into the mountain. Now at the end of the tunnel, there's a circular room that leads you into a golden elevator. Thankfully, the Eagle's Nest wasn't destroyed in World War II, and today it's a restaurant with panoramic views. Now while you're there, you can hike up some walking paths into the Berchtesgaden National Park, enjoying the incredible sights of this historical destination. After, we're going to head over to the Austrian Alps. I was lucky enough to spend several days road tripping Austria, and I was just shocked by the beauty of the country. Now one of my favorite places I went to is the town of Gossau. It was just this little town that I stumbled upon, and it had one of the most incredible backdrops of the nearby mountains. Now just up the road from Gossau is a lake called Gossau Sea. Now one incredible place there is the ladder to heaven. I tried to do it, but unfortunately I didn't have the right gear. Now after, we're going to visit the nearby village of Hallstatt. Located just 20 minutes from Gossau, Hallstatt looks like it could be in a fairy tale. It's rumored to be the inspiration of the town Arendelle from the Disney film Frozen, and I can totally see the resemblance. Hallstatt began as a salt mine nearly 7,000 years ago, and today the village is one of Austria's most popular tourist attractions. While you're there, you can walk the cobblestone alleys and marvel at the 16th century Alpine houses. I mean, just such an enchanting place. If you like mountains, you'll love the Grossglockner High Alpine Road. It's the highest road in Austria at 2,504 meters. When I was there, I went to the park during sunrise. It cost about $35 to enter, and I drove up the road. I was just stunned by the view of the surrounding mountains. While you're there, you can also visit the Pastorius Glacier, which is just a short drive over. After, we're going to head back to Switzerland to visit Zurich. Located in north-central Switzerland, Zurich is one of the world's largest financial centers. It's often labeled as one of the most expensive cities in the world. Now, Zurich was founded by the Romans in 15 BC, and today it's the most populous city in Switzerland. I mean, it's just hard to beat the scenery of the city there. I love how it sits at the edge of the lake, and the Limmat River runs right through it. I mean, Switzerland doesn't mess around when it comes to its cities. Now, if you want to do a challenging hike near Zurich, you can visit Limmernsee. This is one of my favorite hikes I did in Switzerland. You start by taking up a cable car, and when you reach the top, you're going to go through a 3-kilometer tunnel through the mountain. I believe it was originally built by a company who made the dam, and now you could walk through it. We reached the end and we arrived at the lake. It's this striking turquoise color surrounded by an amphitheater of mountain walls. Now the hike to the top was freaking hard. It's very steep and felt like it went on forever, but after about an hour we made it to the iconic viewpoint. It's this rocky peninsula that gives you a perfect view of the reservoir below. I just had a blast running around up there. I mean, there's no greater feeling than running free in the mountains. Afterwards, we're going to visit one of my favorite places in Switzerland, Lauterbrunnen. This is possibly the most beautiful village on earth. It's a valley of over 72 waterfalls, and it inspired J.R.R. Tolkien's Rivendell. To get to Lauterbrunnen, it's about a 2-hour drive from Zurich. The Stavik Falls is one of the most magical features of Lauterbrunnen. It falls over 297 meters into the valley. If you do visit Lauterbrunnen, I recommend just walking around the village and marveling at all the beauty Lauterbrunnen has to offer. Another thing you can do in Lauterbrunnen is visit the nearby village of Wengen. It's located above Lauterbrunnen, and I believe Wengen is home to the most beautiful view in the world as it overlooks the valley. Now the village is home to around 1,300 residents year-round, but it gets many visitors during the summer and winter months. Now to get to Wengen, you can't drive there. It's one of Switzerland's car-free villages, but you can either hike or take one of the most scenic train rides. It costs around $13 round trip and winds up the mountain. The views on the train ride will take your breath away. Now once you get to Wengen, you can walk around its paths and just marvel at all the Swiss chalets and incredible views of the valley below. After, we're going to visit the village of Mürren. Now just from Lauterbrunnen, it's just a few minutes drive down the valley. Now the city is just enchanting. It's filled with Swiss chalets and incredible views. The main reason I wanted to go to Mürren is to do the iconic Via Ferrata. I rented some gear at the Intersport store for about $25 and I was all ready to go. Before you start, you walk through this tunnel. It's a good initiation and gets you pumped or nervous for what's to come. You then follow the path and it's pretty chill for the first bit. You just walk through a little forest, but then you get to the cliffs. There was this base jump platform to jump into the valley below. Just standing on it made my stomach drop. Anyways, after that, the Via Ferrata gets a little wild. My favorite part is this section that goes across this sheer cliff face with the 1,000-foot drop right below you. I mean, it's perfectly safe as long as you're clipped in to the iron wire with your gear. After the cliff section, I continued on the trail, and the final obstacle is a bridge that goes over a deep canyon. This was honestly the scariest part for me because it was kind of shaky towards the middle, and the 1,000-foot plus drop is intimidating, but nonetheless, I finished and made it to the town of Gimmelwald. It took me about 2 hours to do, and it was just so freaking fun. Now after, we're going to visit the Aletsch Glacier. Now located in the Bernese Alps, the Aletsch Glacier is over 23 kilometers long, making it the longest glacier in Switzerland. I mean, just so freaking huge. When I got to the top, it was just hard to fathom the scale of this glacier, and I found the uniform dark lines of shattered rock so interesting. When you're up at the top, you can enjoy a meal at the restaurant, or you can hike to the cross on Egeshorn Peak to get a panoramic view of the glacier. After, we're going to head over to western Switzerland to visit the charming medieval town of Gruyere. I was here this last summer and I was just blown away by this little town. The crowning feature of Gruyere is its castle. It was built in the 13th century and today it stands as one of Switzerland's most famous fortresses. I just love the backdrop it has of the Alps. I mean, just such an insane location. Aside from the castle, the town is just fun to walk around, and it's also known for being the home of the famous Gruyere cheese, which is one of the most popular cheeses in all of Switzerland. Now afterwards, we're going to head to the nearby Glacier 3000. Now located about an hour from Gruyere, Glacier 3000 is this incredible mountain area. Now the main reason I wanted to go here was to visit the Peak Walk, which is the only peak-to-peak bridge in all of Switzerland. We had to take 2 gondolas up to get there, and when we reached the top, we were at the edge of some clouds. I mean, it was just so wild to be up there, and I'd love to go back on a clear day to get a better view of the mountains. Now afterwards, we're going to visit one of my favorite cities in all of Switzerland, Geneva. Located on the southern tip of Lake Geneva in western Switzerland, Geneva is Switzerland's second most populous city after Zurich. I was lucky enough to live here for a summer and I just absolutely loved it. It's where the headquarters of the United Nations are, so there's a lot going on. The Geneva water fountain is one of the city's most famous landmarks as it jets out water that shoots over 140 meters high. I mean, I just love Geneva and I hope you all can visit one day. Now if you want to explore more of Lake Geneva, I recommend checking out the vineyards that border the lake. One of my favorite places is near this village called Epis. It's full of terraced vineyards that accompany the view of the massive lake. I mean, it doesn't even feel like you're in Switzerland. I felt like I was in France or Italy. The north shore of Lake Geneva is called the Swiss Riviera, and I totally understand why. Now afterwards, we're going to head over to nearby France to visit the French Alps. Now this is easily one of my favorite regions in all of France. It's home to the incredibly massive Mont Blanc, which is the highest mountain in all the Alps at 4,807 meters. Mont Blanc doesn't have the most prominent peak compared to other mountains, but it's just hard to comprehend how huge this mountain is. Now the town located at the base of Mont Blanc is Chamonix. It's a hub for some of Europe's best skiing and hikes. I really enjoyed walking around the town. It reminded me of a French Zermatt. Now one thing you gotta do while you're there is take the gondola to Les Aiguilles du Midi. Now to get there, you can take a 20-minute cable car ride, which holds the world record for the highest vertical ascent by a cable car, with an altitude gain of over 2,807 meters. It costs about 69 euros for a round-trip ticket to the top. Now while I was there, it was extremely packed. I think there was like some holiday going on, so just plan accordingly. You'll take 2 lifts up. I mean, just wild how steep it is. Now when you reach the top, you'll be at an elevation of 3,843 meters. You can definitely feel the shortness of oxygen in your lungs. When you get off the lift, you'll walk through this labyrinth of tunnels carved straight out of the granite. There's tons of walkways and platforms to explore. You'll get an excellent view of Mont Blanc and the other mountains. Now one thing I thought was crazy is that there's a place where the mountaineers exit to either go hike to Mont Blanc or just explore the glacier. Les Aiguilles du Midi was such an incredible experience and definitely the highlight of our time in the French Alps. Afterwards, we're going to visit the nearby city of Annecy. Now located at the foot of the Alps, about an hour's drive from Chamonix, this alpine town is famous for its canals, hence it's called the Venice of the Alps. Now the city is just absolutely magical, but what I love about the region is the Lake Annecy. It's surrounded by scenic mountains, and it's known as one of the cleanest lakes in all Europe. I mean, I can't think of a better place to enjoy on a hot summer day. After, we're going to head down to southern France to the French Riviera. Now located on the southeast corner of France, I have to say that the French Riviera is home to some of the world's best coastline. One stunning city on the French Riviera is Menton. It's strikingly beautiful with its colorful buildings complemented with a backdrop of the Maritime Alps. We stayed several days here and I really enjoyed just walking around the city. Menton was a part of Italy until 1860 when it and the rest of Nice County was added to France. There's a great boardwalk that walks along the coast, and I really enjoyed going out to the lighthouse pier to get panoramic views of Menton. Now afterwards, we're going to visit the medieval town of Èze. Now located on a hilltop tower looking over the French Riviera, I have to say this was easily the coolest medieval place I visited in my time in southern France. It was only a short 30-minute drive from Menton. Now Èze was founded during the Middle Ages around the 14th century, and today it is known worldwide for its medieval vibe and views of the French Riviera. I mean, you really feel like you're walking back in time. Everything is so old, yet it's perfectly preserved, and the village is just full of like these tunnel walkways and trees that were just built around. Truly is such a cool place. Now one of the main features of the village is the exotic garden. It's this beautiful place that sits on top of the village. It not only has beautiful plants and cactuses, but it offers one of the best views of the French Riviera. It's definitely worth the hike and €6 entry fee. Now afterwards, we're going to visit the town of Saint-Tropez. Now this is one of my favorite towns I visited on the French Riviera. Saint-Tropez is located about an hour-and-a-half drive from Nice. Now Saint-Tropez grew as a fishing village and military stronghold until the 20th century, and it was the first town to be liberated on the French Riviera during World War II. In the 1960s, Saint-Tropez started gaining popularity amongst jet setters, and today it's renowned for its beaches, nightlife, and yachts. Now the main part of Saint-Tropez is pretty small, but I love just walking around its streets and alleyways. There was this path that walks along the coast, and it was just really nice to explore. All in all, Saint-Tropez is a really beautiful town, and I understand why it's so popular. Now afterwards, we're going to visit Cassis. Now I think this was my favorite place we visited in southern France. We stayed several days here. I'm just so glad we did. It's a seaside town with that classic French chic charm. Now Cassis is overlooked by Cap Canaille, which is home to the highest sea cliffs in all of France with a height of 394 meters. Now one of the main reasons I wanted to go to Cassis and just southern France in general was to visit the Calanques. Now they are these incredible sea coves surrounded by daunting cliffs and crystal clear waters. The one I really wanted to go to is Kalank Dambu. Hope I said that right. Now there's several ways to get here. You can either take a boat, kayak, or hike in. Now on our first day there, we rented a little boat from the harbor in Cassis and headed out to the Calanques. Now the views on the way were just absolutely incredible. Now one downside about the boat is we couldn't land on the beach. You can only drive like halfway through and then it's roped off. But if you do rent a kayak or a paddleboard, you can take it to the beach, which I definitely recommend if you can handle the long paddle. Now we went in as far as we could in the Calanque and then turned around after we just kept exploring the coastline, heading west as we relaxed in this other Calanque with some just really unique cliffs and rock formations. It was such a phenomenal area. Now the next day I really wanted to go to the beach in the Kalank Damvu, so we decided to do a hike. Now the hike was about 7 kilometers long and it had this one steep descent to get down to the beach, nothing you can't handle. Now once we reached the beach, I mean it was really an amazing sight. The steep white cliffs coupled with the greens of the pines and blues of the water were just amazing. Now the beach was a decent size with a lot of smooth pebbles. We went for a swim and the water was just so freaking clear. I wanted to find a cliff jump spot, so after swimming down the cove, I found this rock about 7 meters high and did a few jumps off of it. I mean, there's truly no better feeling than cliff jumping into the Mediterranean. Afterwards, we're going to head back to Italy to visit the island of Ponza. Now, before this last summer, I had no idea this island existed. But after seeing some videos of this place, I had to go see it in person. It's located off the west coast of Italy, and it took about a 2-hour ferry ride to get there. Now Ponza is full of history. It was a popular island during Roman times with many ruins and tunnels that still exist today. One of the best ways to see Ponza is by boat. We rented one and cruised around the whole island. I was just baffled by the volcanic cliffs and endless coves and grottos. One of my favorite memories of the island was just anchoring in this little cove and spending hours there swimming and enjoying the Mediterranean sun. It's just hard to beat that lifestyle. Anyways, one of the most famous places on the island is Chaya di Luna Beach. It's known for its massive white cliffs and a beach shaped like the crescent moon. You can get there by boat, or there is an ancient Roman tunnel you can walk through. I just can't believe how big the cliffs are. Now afterwards, we're going to head over to Sicily to visit the Aeolian Islands. Now the Aeolian Islands are an archipelago made up of 7 inhabited islands located off of Sicily's northern coast. Now the islands were created by volcanic activity, and as a result they are home to some of the most bizarre landscapes. Now to get to the Aeolian Islands, there's several ways to go about it. You can take a ferry from the town of Milazzo, or you can experience them by a sailboat. We sailed around for a week and went to some of the most phenomenal places the islands have to offer. Now the most epic island on the archipelago is probably Stromboli. It's nicknamed the lighthouse of the Mediterranean, and at night you can see lava shooting out the top. We took a boat to the northern side of the island and got some of the best views of the volcano. Now another one of my favorite islands was Panarea. It's the smallest of the Aeolian Islands but has so much charm. I loved all the whitewashed houses. It reminded me of a Greek island. There was also these huge sea cliffs. I mean, I just couldn't believe how huge they were. And then there was also these little islands off Panarea that had these volcanic sea bubbles we went snorkeled in and explored. I just loved the Aeolian Islands so freaking much and couldn't recommend them enough. After, we're going to head over to Sicily's mainland to visit Cefalù. Now located about an hour's drive from Palermo, this may be one of my favorite places in Sicily. We spent several days here and I just really enjoyed it. Cefalù was first mentioned back in 396 BC, and today it's one of Sicily's most well-known towns. One of my favorite things about Cefalù was its sunsets. The light hits the town perfectly, giving it this orange glow. I love just chilling on the beach, admiring the town's architecture. I mean, walking back through the town's alleyways made me feel like I was walking into Italy from a different era. I mean, I couldn't recommend Cefalù enough. Afterwards, we're going to visit Taormina. Located on the eastern side of Sicily, Taormina is this incredible hilltop town full of Italian charm and history. The town was founded around ancient Greek times and has been a popular European getaway since the 19th century. I just had a great time walking around the alleyways and streets of the town. I really liked the main piazza. One of the main reasons I wanted to visit Taormina was to visit the Isola Bella, now also called the Pearl of the Ionian Sea. The Isola Bella is this beautiful island located right below Taormina. You can get there by taking a gondola from the town if you don't want to make the hike. Now once you get down to the bay, you'll find a nice beach perfect for some Mediterranean sunbathing. Now afterwards we're going to head up to Mount Etna. Now with a height of 3,357 meters, Mount Etna is the highest active volcano in all of Europe. It's also one of the most active volcanoes in the world. Now when we were there, we drove as high as we could on the volcano. From there you can take up a gondola and then you can ride up on these special cars even higher. I'm so mad at myself because we got there right around 4:30 and that's when the lift closed. Instead we decided to hike around some of the craters right by the parking lot. It's just hard to comprehend how massive this volcano is. There's volcanic rock that continues down the mountain. You get these insane views from out there. Just such an incredible spot. Now afterwards we're going to head over to the nearby island of Malta. Now located in the Mediterranean between Sicily and North Africa, Malta is this small island country home to some of Europe's best coastline and numerous historical sites. The capital city of Malta is Valletta. Now located in the southeastern region on the main island of Malta, Valletta is a sight to see with only an area of 0.61 square kilometers. It's the European Union's smallest capital city. Valletta was established back in 1566 after the Knights of Malta defeated the Ottomans who attempted to conquer Malta in the Great Siege. Today the architecture of Valletta is absolutely stunning. It's the perfect mixture of Baroque and modern architecture. I just love how the whole city is dominated by 10 medieval buildings. If you visit the city, you can check out the saluting battery. At noon, a cannon is fired. Pretty cool if you ask me. Valletta just has so much beauty and history, and I hope you all can witness it in person. After, we're going to head over to Slovenia to visit Piran. Located on a narrow peninsula in the Adriatic Sea, Piran was part of the Roman Empire back in 178 BC. During medieval times, it became part of the Republic of Venice, with much of its Italian influence still prevalent today. I just love its medieval charm and orange roof buildings. While you're there, you can visit the Tartini Central Square or take a walk around the edge of the town, marveling at the Adriatic Sea. Now afterwards, we're going to head over to the Kamnik-Savinja Alps. Now this may be one of my favorite parts of Slovenia. It's home to just stunning landscapes and alpine towns. Now one incredible place is the Logar Valley. It's one of the most beautiful alpine glacial valleys in all of Europe. Truly a spectacular place. Now one of my favorite features of Slovenia is its hilltop churches. They dot the landscape and create some of the most picturesque sceneries. One of the most notable is the Church of St. Thomas. It's located in the town of Selka and has one of the most enchanting views as it's perfectly placed on a hilltop with the Kamnik Alps in the distance. Another scenic chapel is the Church of St. Primoz and Felician. It's located in the town of Jamnik, and the church was built back in the 16th century and it offers one of the most beautiful settings with a path that leads up to the church with the backdrop of the Alps. It doesn't get more spiritual than a church in nature. After, we're going to head over to the country of Croatia. If you love medieval towns, endless islands, and crystal clear waters, you'll fall in love with Croatia. One of the most famous regions in the country is the Dalmatian coast. Now consisting of the southernmost region of Croatia, the Dalmatian coast is home to some of Croatia's most popular destinations. You can visit Dubrovnik. It's this extremely well preserved medieval old town surrounded by this massive wall that you can walk on. If you want to escape to one of the islands, you can visit Korčula. It's the second most populated island in the Adriatic Sea. I really like its old town that was built upon this peninsula. It's been part of the Venetian Republic off and on since the 12th century, and some historians believe that Marco Polo was born here. Now if you have a sailboat, you gotta experience the Kornati Islands. It's an archipelago with over 140 islands and islets, and some of the bluest water I've ever seen. I'd love to spend a week sailing around them someday. Another one of my favorite places in Croatia is Rovinj. Now located on the Istrian Peninsula on Croatia's western coast, Rovinj is one of the most beautiful medieval fishing towns I've ever seen. From 1283 to 1797, Rovinj was governed by the Republic of Venice. Today it is part of Croatia and it's one of the country's most beautiful cities. When you walk the streets, you'll feel like you're in Italy due to its Italian influence. Now afterwards we're going to head over to the country of Montenegro. Now with mountains like the Alps and a Mediterranean coastline, I think Montenegro is one of the most underrated countries in all of Europe. Now one of the most popular destinations in Montenegro is the coastal town of Kotor. It's located in what some consider to be Europe's southernmost fjord. Now, from the early 1400s until the end of the 18th century, it was part of the Venetian Republic, which influenced much of its architecture, which stands today. It's grown in popularity over the years, and it's a popular cruise ship stop. Now, I think the whole Bay of Kotor is such an incredible location with its massive mountains that line the coast, coupled with its medieval architecture. It reminds me of a real-life Numenor. Now, if you want to explore some of Montenegro's mountains, you can head up to Derbentor. It's located about a 4-hour drive from Kotor, and it offers some of Montenegro's best nature. An impressive spot is a glacial lake called Crino Jezero that offers an amazing view of the Dinaric Alps. You can also drive on Derbentor's winding narrow roads that navigate through the mountains. Another fascinating spot in Montenegro is the Crino-Jevica River. It's a serpentine waterway that winds into the Skadar Lake. It creates such a unique landscape, it doesn't even feel like you're in Europe. And it's just so bizarre and beautiful. You can get a great view of the river from the Pavlova Strana viewpoint. Now afterwards, we're going to head over to Serbia to visit Belgrade. It's the capital and largest city in Serbia with a population of 1.7 million. What's crazy about Belgrade is that it's one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in Europe and the world. One of the most notable attractions of the city is the Belgrade Fortress. It was built all the way back in 279 BC. It sits atop a hill and offers one of the best views in Belgrade. If you want to see some of Serbia's nature, you can head over to Lake Peručac. It's located right in the Serbia-Bosnia border, and it's this reservoir with some steep mountains. Another interesting place downstream from the lake is the Drina River House. It was originally built in 1968, but has been destroyed 7 times from rising water levels, but it's been rebuilt every time. I mean, just such an interesting little house. Now after Serbia, we're going to head over to the neighboring country of Albania. Now with alpine mountains and its own coastal riviera, Albania is a gem of a country. The capital city is Tirana. It's known for its Ottoman and Soviet era architecture. Now from Tirana, you can make the 3-hour drive to the alpine village of Theth. It's located in the Albanian Alps and it's just surrounded by phenomenal views. I mean, I think the area is one of the most beautiful places in Albania. The mountains here are just phenomenal, and I would love to spend a few weeks hiking around them. Now after Albania, we're going to head over to Greece to visit the nearby island of Corfu. Now located in the northwestern part of Greece, Corfu is one of the greenest Greek islands in my opinion. It reminds me a lot of the scenery of the nearby island of Zakynthos with its white cliffs, green vegetation, and incredibly clear waters. Now one of my favorite places in Corfu is Porto Timoni. It's this incredible horseshoe-shaped bay with beaches on both sides. Another interesting spot on the island is Cape Drastis. It's this cliff area with these really unique shaped sea cliffs that are worth checking out, especially during sunset. Now another popular Greek island is Mykonos. I mean, after Santorini, I think Mykonos is Greece's most famous island. It's known for its vibrant nightlife and white buildings. Mykonos is nicknamed the Island of Wind, and there's some really cool windmills you can check out. I mean, it's an ideal island if you want to relax during the day and just party it up all night. After, we're going to visit the city of Athens. It's the capital and largest city in Greece, and it's one of the world's oldest cities. I have to say that Athens is one of my favorite cities in all of Europe. It's just such a wild place with so much history. Now, one of my favorite places in Athens is the Acropolis. It costs about 20 euros to get in, so it's a little expensive, but it's totally worth it. From the Acropolis, you're able to get incredible panoramic view of all of Athens. There's just an endless sea of white buildings with mountains in the background. If you do go to Greece, I definitely recommend exploring Athens for at least a day or two. It's just such a unique place. After Greece, we're going to head up to Romania to visit Bucharest. Now located in the south of Romania, Bucharest is the country's capital with a population of 1.8 million. It's referred to as the Paris of the East thanks to its elegant architecture. Now one of the most impressive buildings in the city is the Palace of Parliament. It's the heaviest building in the world, weighing over 4 million tons. I mean, that's kind of crazy to think about. Now I just love how the long street leads up to the palace. Now similar to Paris, Bucharest has the Arch of Triumph, dedicated to the heroes of World War I and Romania's War of Independence. Bucharest definitely is a European capital worth visiting. After Bucharest, we're going to take a drive on the Trans-Făgărașan Highway. Now this is definitely the most well-known road in Romania and was claimed to be the best road in the world by the TV show Top Gear. The road was built by Romanian military in the 1970s as a response to the 1968 invasion of Czechoslovakia by the Soviet Union. Now the military wanted to make sure they had quick access across the mountains in case of an invasion. Today, the road is an incredible scenic drive as it passes through the Transylvanian Alps. The road is usually open from July to October, and climbs to an altitude of 2,042 meters. Now while you're there, you can make a pit stop and do some hiking in the Transfiguration Mountains. I mean, such an incredible area, and drive. Afterwards, we're going to head over to the city of Brasov. Now located near the Carpathian Mountains in Transylvania, Brasov is a charming city known for its medieval Saxon walls and towering Gothic black church. Sadly, in the 17th century, a fire destroyed almost all of Brasov's walled city, but thankfully it was rebuilt, and today it's one of the most popular cities in Transylvania, and thanks to its location, it's a great hub to explore other places around Romania. Now one of my favorite nearby places is the Bran Castle. It's located just 30 minutes outside of Brasov, and it's famously known as Dracula's castle. Now while there is no evidence that the author of Dracula knew anything about this castle, it definitely has a spooky vibe to it. Now another impressive castle in Romania is the Corvin Castle. Now it's located in western Romania in the town of Hunedoara. Now Corvin Castle is one of the largest castles in all of Europe. I mean, just absolutely massive. Like Bran Castle, it has a creepy vibe to it. It was used as a residence, also served as a prison in few areas. I mean, I can't imagine what it must have been like to see this castle during medieval times. I mean, just so enormous. Needless to say, Romania is home to some incredible castles. After Romania, we're going to head up to Slovakia to visit Bratislava. Now located on the border between Austria and Hungary, Bratislava became Slovakia's capital after the Velvet Revolution, which split Czechoslovakia into two separate countries, making it one of Europe's youngest capital cities. Today, Bratislava has a population of around 400,000, and it ranks as the third richest region in the European Union. One of the most prominent features of the capital is the Bratislava Castle. Now located on an isolated hill right above the Danube River, the Bratislava Castle has been the symbol of the city since the Middle Ages. It's just absolutely massive, and it can be seen from all over the city. One of my favorite places in Slovakia is the Vojnice Castle. Now located about a 2 hours drive from Bratislava, this may be the most beautiful and visited castle in all Slovakia. The Vojnice Castle was first mentioned in the 12th century, and it was owned by Hungarian noble families. Today you can visit the castle and explore its grounds. Now afterwards we're going to venture to the Orava Castle. Now located about 3 hours from Bratislava, the Orava Castle is possibly the most perfectly placed castle as it rests on top of a skinny rock cliff. It's also one of the most spooky castles I've ever seen. It was used in many scenes of the 1922 horror film Nosferatu. So you definitely get some Dracula vibes here. It was built upon a former fortress in the 13th century after a Mongol invasion to defend what was then the Hungarian kingdom. Now, like many other castles, Orava was added on, destroyed by a fire, and then restored. I just think it's so crazy that they're able to build this castle on top of the stone peaks. I mean, it doesn't even look real. If you want some spooky vibes, you definitely gotta check this castle out. Now afterwards, we're gonna head over to the mountains to visit the High Tatras. Now located right in the Polish-Slovakian border, the High Tatras are part of the Carpathian mountain range and are considered to be the smallest alpine mountains in all of Europe. The highest place in the Tatras in all of Slovakia is Gerlach Peak with an elevation of 2,655 meters. Now the High Tatras are home to plenty of wildlife such as the Eurasian brown bear. I just really love the look of these mountains. They have such a unique appearance to them. Now after, we're going to head over to Poland side of the Tatras to visit Zakopane. Now located right at the base of the mountains, Zakopane is a perfect starting place for your mountain adventures. During the wintertime, Zakopane is an ideal place to go skiing, and in the summer months, it's a prime place to start your hike into the mountains. One of the most impressive spots in the Tatras is the Morskie Oko Lake. I mean, just such a phenomenal view up there. Now after, we're going to head over to the beautiful city of Wrocław. I mean, it's such a tricky pronunciation. Wrocław is such a charming historical place. It's home to one of the most beautiful market squares in all of Europe. It's lined with elegant townhouses and cobblestone streets. Wrocław also has one of the most beautiful cathedrals in Poland. It was originally built in 1272, but has been damaged and rebuilt several times throughout the centuries. Wrocław is just the perfect place to just walk around and explore for a day. After, we're going to head up to northern Poland to visit Gdansk. Now located on the Baltic Sea, Gdansk is one of Poland's oldest cities with a fascinating history with periods of Polish, Russian, and German rule. The earliest mention of Gdansk was in the year 997 AD, and during the Middle Ages, Gdansk grew as an important seaport and shipbuilding town. It rose to be one of the wealthiest and largest cities in Poland until Warsaw's rapid growth in the 18th century. Today, Gdansk is one of Poland's most beautiful cities. I mean, I just can't believe it's old town. It's full of these perfectly placed houses that seem to go on forever. Now, just an hour's drive from Gdansk is the Malbork Castle, and this is the largest castle in the world by land area. It was built in the 13th century by the Teutonic Knights, who were German Catholic crusaders, and as the number of the knights grew, so did the castle, which encloses an area of 52 acres. I mean, it's just crazy to think that people were able to build such buildings back then. More than half of Malbork Castle was destroyed during World War II, but thankfully it was rebuilt to its former glory. After, we're going to head over to the Netherlands. Famous for its tulips, windmills, and endless canals. One thing that's really interesting about the Netherlands to me is that it's actually grown in size over the century, thanks to the Dutch's ability to use dikes, pumps, and polders to remove seawater and reclaim land. If it weren't for the Dutch's sea-defending innovations, about 65% of the country would be underwater at high tide. Now, the most famous city in the Netherlands is Amsterdam. It's known for its elaborate canal system, narrow houses, and countless bridges. Amsterdam just has a vibe like none other. I was in Amsterdam many years ago, and its impression has always left a mark on me. Now, an interesting place in the Netherlands is Kinderdijk. It's located about an hour from Amsterdam. Kinderdijk is this village famous for its 19 windmills that were built in the mid-1700s to pump water out the nearby polders. It just amazes me that the Dutch were able to make windmills back then to drain water. Now, while you're there, you can walk along the paths and marvel at the windmills and canals. While we're still in the Netherlands, we're going to head over to Rotterdam, now located just an hour's drive from Amsterdam. Rotterdam's history dates back to the 13th century. Due to its location between Germany and Britain, it was completely destroyed in World War II. When Rotterdam was rebuilt, the city was extremely bold with its buildings and unique architecture. Today, Rotterdam's skyline is full of modern skyscrapers. Now, afterwards, we're going to head over to Belgium to visit Brussels. Now, located in the heart of the country, Brussels is the most densely populated region with a population of 1.2 million. After World War II, Brussels became a major center for international politics. It is the de facto capital of the European Union. One of my favorite places was the Grand Place. It's the central square of the city, and I just remember being blown away by the immaculate buildings and all the cobblestone. The square is considered to be one of the most beautiful in all of Europe, and I totally understand why. While you're there, you can treat yourself to a Belgian waffle. Now, a really interesting attraction is the Atomium Landmark Building. It was built in 1958 for the Brussels World Fair, and there's a restaurant with an incredible panoramic view on top. Another one of my favorite places in Belgium is the riverside village of Dinant. Now, located about an hour's drive from Brussels, Dinant is a charming town. I just love how the river runs right through it, and the rock cliff overlooks the town. Afterwards, we're going to head over to the nearby country of Luxembourg. Now, the country of Luxembourg is one of the smallest in the world. It's nestled between Belgium, France, and Germany and has a population around 600,000. Luxembourg also has the highest GDP per capita in the world, which is pretty crazy. Now, the crowning feature of the country is its capital, Luxembourg City. Built among deep gorges cut out by surrounding rivers, the city is home to one of the most impressive medieval old towns. Now, what made this landscape so appealing is that it's surrounded by sheer cliffs that serve as a natural fortification against invading armies. Luxembourg's fortifications grew gradually and it became one of Europe's strongest fortresses. Sadly, in 1867, the Treaty of London required Luxembourg's fortress to be torn down so it could be a place of neutrality. Today, the fortress's ruins still remain. The best place to see them is the Bach Promontory, where you'll find the city's famed cliffs, underground tunnels, and fascinating history. Luxembourg is such a stunning capital. Afterwards, we're going to head over to the UK to visit Cornwall. Now, located on England's southwestern tip, Cornwall is home to some of the best coastline in all of England. While the northern coast is full of impressive sea cliffs, such as Godrevy Point, the southern coast is named the Cornish Riviera as it's full of scenic harbor towns and villages. One of my favorites is Looe. It's this picturesque town that's divided by the Looe River, which empties into the sea. There's an incredible beach full of classic English houses. It very well could be a fairy tale. One of the most impressive locations in Cornwall is St. Michael's Mount. It's a tidal island with an impressive castle on top. It's believed to be the home of a monastery from the 8th to 11th centuries, and the castle on the island summit dates back to the 12th centuries and has been renovated throughout the ages. When the tide goes out, you can walk across the stone causeway to get there. I think it's one of the coolest places in England. It reminds me a lot of France's Mont Saint-Michel. While we're still in southwestern England, we're going to head over to the Isles of Scilly. Located about 28 miles off Cornwall, the Isles of Scilly are an archipelago made up of 5 inhabited islands with a population around 2,000 people. The islands are full of crystal clear waters, historical sites, and rolling green hills. To reach the islands, you can take a 3-hour ferry from Penzance, or you can take a short plane ride. The islands truly are stunning. I'd love to get a boat and just sail around the islands in the summertime. After, we're going to head back to the coast to visit the White Cliffs of Dover. Located about a 2 hours drive from London, the White Cliffs of Dover are not only a beautiful scenic location, but also an intriguing historical site, especially regarding World War II history. Since the cliffs are Britain's closest point to continental Europe, being only 20 miles from France, during World War II, crossing from Dover was the primary route to Europe by boat or plane, so the White Cliffs were the first and last site of Britain for the troops. After the evacuation of Dunkirk, the site of the Cliffs of Dover was a sign of relief as the thousands of Allied troops made it safely back to Britain. I mean, the history of these cliffs is absolutely fascinating. Afterwards, we're going to visit the Lake District. Located in northwestern England, the Lake District is known for its glacial ribbon lakes and its fell mountains. It's home to Scafell Pike, which is the highest place in all of England with an elevation of 3,209 feet. The area is just absolutely beautiful. I think one of the best things you can do in the Lake District is just drive on the roads that wind through the mountains. One notable road is the Honister Pass. If you keep driving down the pass, you'll reach Buttermere Lake. It's surrounded by massive mountains and it's just incredible overall scenery. I mean, I couldn't recommend the Lake District enough. Easily one of the most beautiful places in all of England. After, we're going to head up to Scotland to visit Glencoe. Located in the Scottish Highlands, Glencoe is home to some of Scotland's most beautiful scenery and mountains. I found this place by accident as I was driving around the Highlands. It's been the filming location for many popular movies such as Braveheart. My favorite part of Glencoe is its mountains. I mean, I couldn't believe how huge they were. I felt like I was in Switzerland or Norway. I recommend just taking a drive on the A82 road and you can just see all the wonders Glencoe has to offer. It has one of my favorite mountains in the area. I won't even try to pronounce that. It has an almost perfect pyramid shape and you get a great view of it from the road. Now after, we're going to head over to one of Scotland's most iconic locations, the Glenfinnan Viaduct. Located at the top of Loch Shiel in the West Highlands of Scotland, this may look familiar because it was featured in the Harry Potter movies. While I was there, I wanted to get a close look at the bridge, so I walked underneath it. I was just shook how big it actually was. After, I hiked up to a good vantage point so I could see the famous train go across the viaduct. It was such a magical experience. Afterwards, we're going to head over to Spain to visit Picos de Europa. Now located in the north of the country, I think these are some of the most underrated mountains in Europe. One of the most impressive places is Naranjo de Bulnes. It's this massive rock tower that shoots straight out of the mountain. I just want to go there so bad and hike around the mountains for days. Now afterwards, we're going to head to central Spain to visit the historic town of Toledo. Located right in the middle of the country, Toledo is a stunning ancient city perfectly placed on a hill. It's known as the City of Three Cultures due to its influences from Christians, Muslims, and Jews. The history of Toledo is fascinating and complex. It was taken over by the Moors for several centuries until it was conquered in the 11th century by the Castilians. Today, the city has a population around 80,000. One of the most impressive is the Alcazar de Toledo. It was once used as a Roman palace and then it was eventually restored in the 16th century. Another one of my favorite cities in Spain is Ronda, and it's home to one of the most scenic bridges I've ever seen called Puente Nuevo. It was built in the 18th century to cross the El Tajo Gorge. It stands 120 meters over the canyon floor. I just can't get over the architecture of the arches. What a beautiful spot. Now from Ronda, we're going to make the 2 hours drive to Granada, now located at the base of the Sierra Nevada mountains. The crowning feature of Granada is the Alhambra. It's a fortified Moorish palace that was completed in 1354. The interior of this palace is stunning. There's a reflection pool and a pillared courtyard. I mean, I totally understand why it's one of the most renowned Islamic buildings in Europe. After, we're going to head back to Italy to visit Bologna. Now located about a 2 hours drive from Venice, what I love about Bologna is its medieval towers. They were constructed back in the 12th and 13th centuries, with the highest being over 300 feet tall. Back in medieval times, there were an estimated 180 towers which dominated the city. Over the centuries, many towers were demolished or simply collapsed, and today fewer than 20 towers remain. The most famous are the two towers. The tallest tower reaches over 97 meters with an overhang of 2.2 meters. I mean, they're both leaning a little bit. They look like they're going to collapse. I just can't imagine all the history these towers must have experienced throughout the ages. Afterwards, we're going to visit Matera. Now, you may recognize this town in the most recent James Bond film. Matera is known all around the world for its unique cave dwellings and striking architecture. It's believed that Matera was founded over 9,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements on the planet. To date, Matera is one of Italy's best kept secrets and definitely a town worth visiting. Now, another one of my favorite towns is Portofino. Now, this may be one of the most idyllic towns on the Italian coast. It's renowned worldwide for its picturesque harbor and has been a retreat for royalty and artists as far back as the 12th century. I tried to go here during the peak of the summer, but I got turned back because there was no parking. I definitely recommend coming during the less popular months or early in the morning. Regardless, it's a beautiful place that deserves a visit. Afterwards, we're going to head to the incredible region of Tuscany. Now located in central Italy, Tuscany is known for its landscapes, history, and artistic legacy. I mean, I've been obsessed with Tuscany ever since I've seen The Gladiator. It's a land full of rolling golden hills dotted with countless little hilltop towns. One of the most iconic places in Tuscany is Florence. I have to say that Florence is my favorite city in all of Italy. It's considered to be the birthplace of the Renaissance, and it was the most important political, cultural, and economical city in Europe and the world during that time. The history of this city is endless, and without its influence, our world would probably be very different today. Now, one thing that makes Florence magical is that almost the entire city is made up of medieval buildings, which really transports you back in time. One of the most impressive sights in Florence is the Duomo. And when you look at it, you just can't believe how big it is. It was completed in 1436, and it just amazes me that they were able to engineer such a big dome so long ago. The people of Florence sure dreamt big. The Ponte Vecchio Bridge is another historic site. It's where the famous poet Dante encountered his love Beatrice, and also was the only bridge on the Arno River that wasn't destroyed in World War II. The Palazzo Vecchio is another site you gotta see. Now, to get the best view of all Florence, I recommend you go to the Piazzale Michelangelo. You'll be able to get panoramic views of the city. I mean, I just can't say enough good things about Florence. You're gonna fall in love with this enchanting city. Now, for our final destination, we're going to visit the Italian Dolomites. I have to say these are my favorite mountains in all the world. I spent several weeks exploring these mountains, and I consider it to be some of the greatest days of my life. The Dolomites are home to endless jagged peaks, scenic alpine lakes, and just fairy tale villages. Now, one of the most iconic places in the Dolomites is Trecime di Lavaredo. It's a set of 3 massive rock pillars that tower over the landscape. When I was here, I wanted to watch the sunrise, so me and my buddy George woke up at 5:30 and started hiking towards this vantage point. Anyways, we made it to the top right when the sun started to rise over the peaks. I was just out of breath because we climbed a freaking mountain, but I was able to experience the most incredible sunrise of my life. I mean, I felt so alive, and moments like that is what traveling is all about. Now, another one of my favorite places in Trecime is this place I like to call Mordor, because it looks like a scene straight out of Lord of the Rings. I remember I was in the parking lot and I saw these mountains in the distance, so I started hiking towards them. They were so mystical and dreary, and the whole landscape reminded me of something out of Lord of the Rings. I decided I wanted to hike to the bottom of Mordor, so I followed this path down, and it led me to this cave. I felt like I was walking into Shelob's lair. Luckily, there were no giant spiders in there. I kept walking down. The sketchiest part was when I got to this long, skinny ladder. Anyways, I made it down to the bottom, and I was just overwhelmed by the epicness of the area. I didn't have much daylight left, so I walked back up the trail and was able to get one of the most iconic shots ever of me running along this path. Now, in the moment, I really didn't appreciate how crazy that evening was, but looking back, that was hands down one of my all-time favorite travel experiences. Who would have thought Mordor was in Italy? Well, that is it for my Europe Top 100. This was part 2